Have you ever found yourself avoiding certain movements because you're afraid that they'll make your pain worse? You may not even realize that you're doing it, but over time, this can actually lead to more pain rather than less pain. This is a common and well-researched issue called the fear avoidance cycle, or fear avoidance behavior. And understanding this cycle and knowing how to break it could play a massive role in helping you reduce your pain. In this video, we're going to go over what fear avoidance behavior is, why it's keeping you stuck in pain, and how you can begin to break this cycle. So what is the fear avoidance cycle? First, it starts with pain, the experience of physical pain. And naturally, that leads to a fear of pain, a very understandable and natural response. And then the fear of that pain will lead the body to automatically start to avoid doing the movement that caused the pain. And then that leads to disuse or reduced functionality of that part of the body. But the problem is that when we stop moving, that actually causes more pain. So then we get another pain experience that leads to fear, that leads to avoidance, that leads to more disuse. But then the disuse causes us pain. And then the pain causes fear. And then the fear causes avoidance. And then the avoidance leads to even further reduction of functionality. And then around and around and around you go. You can understand how easy it is to get caught in this cycle because pain is scary. And that's totally fair. But this part of the cycle, this pain that leads into fear, this is the part of the cycle that we need to work with. I was working with a woman in my clinic who had arthritis in her shoulder. So it started with when she reached all the way up, she got pain in her shoulder. Fair enough, arthritis does that. Over the years of having this pain, she started to reduce the amount that she would reach with her arm. She would avoid doing this movement, but then she starts avoiding doing this movement. And then she starts avoiding doing this. And then she gets less and less and less ability to move because she's trying to avoid any pain. But by avoiding the initial pain, the one that was all the way up here, her body has reduced her ability to move all the way down here. By the time she saw me, she was stuck in this position. She couldn't move forward, she couldn't move backwards, she couldn't move up at all. She was basically stuck with like T-Rex ranges of motion. And not only did she have the pain, she also had the diagnosis of arthritis to kind of back up this fear that she had of moving. She was understandably telling herself, oh, I have arthritis, therefore that's causing the pain. Therefore, I can't move, I'm stuck. So when she came to me, she was in a lot of pain. Any movement hurt. Any amount of touching hurt. So what I did first was basically to take her arm and just gently, very, very gently, super slowly start to move it. And straight away, her body seized up. It grabbed. I could feel all of her muscles pull as if they were playing tug of war, pulling her arm in to where it felt safe. And that's okay. And I understood, okay, this is a natural reaction, but I can already tell we can get a little bit more than that. So I just asked her, okay, take a deep breath. I'm not gonna move your arm in any extreme way. We're gonna do this very slowly and very gently. So I'm telling her brain, I'm telling her and her brain and her nervous system what's gonna happen. Everything's gonna be slow and I'm gonna stop as soon as there's any pain. And so with that, she was able to just relax a little bit. And so we started to move it. And we actually started to get movement. We started to help her shoulder move without the muscles getting in the way. And so I'm just moving her arm passively like this. And I'm telling her, okay, let me do all the work. Just let your arm be loose and floppy like a rag doll. I say that to my clients all the time. Loose and floppy like a rag doll, loose and floppy like a rag doll. Be as lazy as you can be. And it's hard. People find it really hard to let go. But we were just doing this. And by the end of the session, we were moving her arm all the way up here with no pain and with her body not grabbing because we were showing her brain, hey, this is safe. These movements are safe. So the next stage was helping her do the movement. So with just a little bit of assistance, I said, okay, now move your arm up And as soon as she got the pain, I was like, great, relax, back down. And then we're just gonna move within that safety zone. And then she tried again. Oh, no pain. Cool, bring it back down, safety zone. And again, just pushing the edges, no pain, amazing. She's starting to do this by herself. And it's not because the arthritis got any better. The arthritis is still there because the arthritis was not actually causing 90% of the pain that she was experiencing. Yes, the arthritis was causing the pain when she was in this position because bone on bone, very uncomfortable. All of the pain that she was experiencing when she was doing these movements was from her brain saying, no, that's not safe. And her brain was making more and more and more and more muscular tension and keeping everything locked in place to the point where it just stopped moving. And that was causing most of her pain. You can imagine that this cycle, if it's been going on for years, it's got some momentum behind it. So it may take a few goes, a few reminders, a few demonstrations for your brain to go like, oh yeah, okay, I remember, this is safe, we can do this. It's just habits. You're just breaking old habits, building new habits. But the thing that allows you to even approach this is facing the fear. Because pain itself is not inherently scary. If you stub your toe, yes, it hurts, but it's not scary because you know it's gonna pass. It's trying to avoid fear of the pain getting worse, of things going wrong, of hurting ourselves even further. It's all of that sort of subconscious, insidious beliefs that make this cycle get started. So what does it look like when we start to face this fear and overcome it and move out of the cycle? We still get the pain. We still get the stimulus because pain is a part of life, especially when you have chronic pain that is from a structural issue. That pain may not go away. But when you break the fear association with the pain, then you move into regaining function and recovery. Now, I don't want to make big sweeping claims that this will fix everything, but if it can help reduce the pain that is as a result of the flow-on effects of the original pain, that's kind of helpful. Say for instance, this client, I was not going to be able to do anything to help her with her arthritis. That's beyond my pay grade. But we gave her back 80, 90% function just by breaking this fear avoidance cycle. That's pretty big. I know that for myself, having experienced chronic pain and chronic illness, if I could have had something that gave me a 10% reduction of pain or illness, I was taking it. So having said that, how do you give this a go for yourself? First step is to become curious and to become just consciously aware of the feelings and emotions and fears that you have around the pain. I know I'm keep pointing to my shoulder because I'm thinking of my client with this shoulder issue, but wherever the pain is, become aware of how you feel about it, how you think about it, what movements you avoid just in case there might be pain. And then very slowly, very gradually, just start to test those boundaries. I am certainly not saying to push through pain. I am not a pain is gain kind of person, and I especially don't want you to just grit your teeth and bear it. But what you may find is that you push up against the pain a little bit and then come back, and then you push a little bit further and you have more room. Just like this client, at first it hurt to do anything. So we just pushed it to just the edge and then brought it back. Stayed within the safety area, safety being no pain, and then pushed it a little bit further and then brought it back. And a little bit further and brought it back. And a little bit further and brought it back. And before we knew it, the brain was like, yeah, I got this. I am not suggesting to just blast through all of those protective mechanisms and protective barriers that your brain has built up to try and keep you safe. But I am saying, just brush up against those boundaries. Just give it a little nudge, see what happens. And just with that little bit of curiosity, what you're doing is you're breaking down the automatic response of pain and fear. Because the pain is not really the issue that we're talking about here, it's the fear. So if you can face pain without fear, you may discover a whole world of new possibilities, new movements, new abilities to explore because you will feel safe to do so. Start with curiosity, start gentle, start small. See what movements you can do. Are there any movements that you assumed you couldn't do, but you actually can? It's very common for people to assume they can't do something, but then when push comes to shove and they do it, they're like, oh, that didn't actually hurt. So we want to test our own boundaries and see if those boundaries are valid. Now, you may come to a boundary that is truly valid. Say for this client, that boundary was here. That arthritic pain was not something she needed to push through because that was not as a response of fear. That is just structural pain. That is bone on bone pain. That is not something that I would ever encourage someone to just push through. Do listen to those boundaries that are legitimate. And you'll know the difference because the pain truly will get worse rather than better. So the fear avoidance cycle is very commonly talked about in relation to musculoskeletal pain. So things like neck pain, shoulder pain, joint pain, tendinitis, arthritis, anything to do with the muscles or the skeleton. It's very commonly talked about in relation to that because it's to do with the reduction of movement. However, it can show up in any kind of chronic pain or chronic illness. When I had eczema, I was definitely stuck in this cycle. I had a big collar of eczema all over my neck, and so it was very difficult to turn my head. When the eczema was really flared up, if I turned my head too far, I truly risked splitting my skin open. So you can kind of understand how the fear of that stopped me from moving entirely. I would just that's how I would move to avoid the potential of damaging myself. Truly, the risk was real. But the thing was that I really would have only done that had I turned my head as far as I could. I really wasn't in danger of splitting my skin if I had just moved like this. It was uncomfortable. Every movement was uncomfortable. But discomfort is just kind of part of the game when you have chronic eczema. And if I wanted to be functional at all, I had to put up with some level of discomfort. So when it came to this fear avoidance cycle that I had developed in my neck of just like not moving, I did have to face some real fears of, okay, just move a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay, no damage, no broken skin. Cool, let's go a little bit further. And I would find the point where I'm like, oh, there. That truly is the place where I should stop. There was a big difference between no movement out of fear versus safe movement and stopping where the danger or the true pain really was. I actually found this video incredibly difficult to film. I found it really challenging to talk about this cycle without making it sound like it's in your head, because that is not what I'm saying. That is the last thing I would ever say to anyone experiencing chronic pain, because as someone who has been there and has been told things like, oh, it's not that bad, it's in your head, you're making it worse, you're making it more difficult. I have heard it all. I have been told all of the things. And so I am afraid of making anyone feel invalidated or making anyone feel like I'm saying that their pain is not real. The pain is very real, but the solution to the pain is very real as well. The pain is not in your head, but the solution is in your head. I don't know how I can say this without upsetting anyone. I know what it feels like to be stuck in pain and stuck in illness and trapped inside my own body. And it is really scary. It is really scary to face that fear, to face the potential of more pain. Because when you've been in pain for long enough, yeah, the prospect of more of it it just becomes unbearable. You don't even want to think about it. And I think that's why this cycle gets going and gets so powerful and messy and tangled, because facing the fear, facing the potential of more pain, it's understandably the last thing that you want to do when you're in pain. But it is also the very thing that will free you from a lot of pain. Okay, I feel like I'm rambling now. This video is getting really long and I feel like it's not very well structured. So I'm gonna stop now. Key takeaways: be curious, test your boundaries, fear keeps the pain cycle going. That's all you really need to know. If you're still here, well done, because this is a really difficult topic. It's a scary subject, even for me, who I'm on the other side of my pain and illness journey, and it's still pretty triggering for me. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And if you want to watch another video on chronic pain, you might like this one. How we talk to ourselves is important and can affect our pain. Like the video, hit subscribe, do all the things, click the buttons if you want to, you don't have to. And I will see you next time. Okay, bye.